Hey Queens, let's talk about diaphragmatic pelvic floor engaged breathing. In this video, we're going to learn a breathing exercise that I believe is the foundational exercise to begin to mobilize the pelvic floor with the respiratory diaphragm. Our pelvic floor moving with our respiratory diaphragm is a crucial female pelvic health function. Understanding the basics of this exercise is going to help you understand and implement that pelvic floor mobility that is so crucial to healing a whole host of pelvic health concerns. Whether you're struggling with prolapse or any degree of pelvic pain, difficulty to orgasm or painful sex, getting this mobilization occurring with your breath is going to be hydrating and allowing for simplicity all within your pelvic bowl. This is a great exercise to learn when you are pregnant and is an exceptional one to practice in your postpartum period. You can practice this as early as a few days postpartum. It is absolutely one that I would continue all throughout your postpartum healing trajectory. Being able to engage and, more importantly, disengage our pelvic floor is essential for other musculature in the whole pelvic region to be recruited for their primary functions. So often we have over-engagement within our pelvic floor muscles, which leads to under-engagement of our outer pelvic muscles. Under-engagement of the outer pelvic muscles, like the glutes, low back, and hamstrings, which are major supporting muscle groups, can lead to instability, pain, and weakness over time. So I encourage you to practice this exercise regularly and really get familiar with the mobility within your pelvic floor. Let's start by looking at the model. This might seem a little nitty-gritty, but I really think the visual is important. So here's our pelvic model, and at the bottom we have the sits bones, the two ischial tuberosities. Right? I want you to picture a thread going from one sit bone to the other, a golden thread across the pelvis. In the back here we have the sacrum, and at the bottom we have the coccyx. Unique in the female pelvis, we have a curved sacrum, and then just above the coccyx, right, just above this little joint, you can see the indent here. There's a little indentation, right, a little dishing that happens in the sacrum. This point, this dish just above the coccyx, will be your internal visual focal point for this exercise. We will orient the pelvis like so the SI joints, or your sacroiliac joints in the back, are lifted, and this point, this little dished portion of the sacrum, will be stable and on the mat. Going back to the threads, there's this thread from one sit bone to the other, and then a secondary thread from just above the coccyx to the pubic bone. So to say that again, you have a thread moving across, and then a thread moving from front to back. Where these threads cross, so just go in your brain and picture, like, okay, thread across from side to side, thread across front to back. Where they cross is in the perineum, generally just behind the vulvar opening. So that thread, that perineal cross, is that cross of the threads in the perineum. That's the center of the pelvic floor. And what we'll be working with is the visual that as you inhale, the threads gently widen, so they become gently taut, as though the tailbone could bow away from the pubis and the sit bones could spread. The bones aren't actually moving, but the muscles are moving against the stable bones. So a gentle spreading of the threads on the inhale. And then as you exhale, that point where those imaginary threads are crossed, that exhale picks up ever so slightly, and you have that lift in the perineum. We don't practice this on every exhale, because for most of us, we need to practice the disengagement far more than the engagement. However, we use how much and how far we can engage and lift up as sort of a measuring stick to be able to address or assess how much we are able to actually disengage and relax. If that didn't make sense right away, it will hopefully make more sense once you're actually doing the breathing exercise. However, just to go back to the visual, I like to call this the pyramid breathing in the pelvic floor, because as you inhale, those threads all become gently taut, and as you exhale, that subtle lift creates a four-sided pyramid in the pelvic floor where there's equal circumferential lift from all sides. What that is not is a Kegel. What it's not is squeezing in. Because just do it now, just squeeze your vagina, right? Everything hugs to the midline and squeezes. While instead, when we have this lifting action, actually the sides of the vagina are opening up, the front and back, the left and right, everything is sort of hoisting out, and then inhale, it's spreading, right? So you have this type of action, which is very different from this squeezing Kegel action. This is important to address because so often when we talk about engaging the pelvic floor, we're really just kind of like hinging in the bones and squeezing in and out. And what we're interested here is the more subtle and far more deeper and postural work of movement of the diaphragm. And so when our respiratory diaphragm moves down, as does our pelvic floor, and then on every 5th round, the respiratory diaphragm will move up strongly and will bring the pelvic floor diaphragm along for the ride. We'll shift onto the mat and we'll give it a go. So for this exercise, you're going to need a blanket. Okay? And this is just a yoga blanket, but a puffy towel would also work. And I'll lay this blanket down on the mat without crinkles. And as I come to lay down, I'll have it just sort of below the tips of my shoulder blades. Yeah, let me scoot down so I'm well in the frame. Okay. And then, I'll scrunch it up so it's not underneath my feet. So we'll leave it here for a minute and we'll address the pelvic alignment. The simplest way to do this, I think, is to make a diamond with your thumbs and forefingers, and then place this diamond just below the navel. So your thumbs are just below the navel and your forefingers are on your pubic bone. From there, push into your feet and feel as though you could pull your feet back. They won't actually move. But see how that lifts my low back? Okay? In that shape, where you have this diamond on your low abdomen, on the womb, right? I want you to picture that there's a marble between your thumbs and forefingers in that diamond. Notice and arrange your pelvis so that that marble is rolling ever so slightly towards your pointer fingers, rather than tipping up towards your thumbs, rolling towards your pointer fingers. Once you have that pelvic alignment, take the blanket, and this is so nice, and you're gonna smush it into your low back, underneath your SI joints, all around your hips, and into the pelvic floor, right? And supporting from the bottom. What this is doing is allowing you to be relaxed, allowing the bones to be supported so that the muscles can move within your bony structure. Now, maintaining this alignment, go back to that image of the focal point just above the coccyx and the sacrum, and note right now, and I can even adjust mine a little more, oh yeah, that's perfect, right? That focal point is the lowest point of your pelvis, and you have this lovely curvature. From here, put your hands on your upper ribs, and I'd like you to inhale, widen your ribs down, and feel that gentle distension or spreading in the pelvic floor, as though those threads could pull gently taut. And then exhale, just do nothing. We'll do that a few times, so you'll repeat a few times. So as you inhale, your focus on the inhale is to widen the side ribs and press the back ribs down. Don't inflate the belly, don't belly breathe, instead rib breathe. And as you do, just picture that spreading coming into the pelvic floor. Some other cues that might be helpful is a gentle drawing down, almost like you could draw out a tampon if you have ever worn them, right? Or just a gentle expansion of the pelvic bones. One last cue that can help me with this expansion is to push into the feet and feel as though they could press apart. That sometimes helps me really open and find spaciousness in the pelvic floor. Hopefully you've done this for 4, 5, or 6 rounds of breath as I've been cueing you. So now on this next round, stick with me. As you inhale, widen, ribs, pelvic floor, everything expands. And now as you exhale, you'll draw the ribs together. I like to make a shushing noise, and I'll picture the cross of those golden threads, and I'll picture it lifting up as I engage, lifting the pelvic floor with the diaphragm. It'll sound like this. And then inhale, release, and do nothing. On the exhale. So what you hopefully just felt is that full lift and engagement that comes from the diaphragm. I would encourage you to repeat this for 5 rounds. That would be 30 breaths in total. So 5 where you're inhaling and disengaging, and then on the 6th breath of every round, you're lifting. What you might observe is as you move through, you'll feel as though that, oh wow, on the 3rd round, I was able to lift higher. But you are not actually lifting higher, you're just lifting from lower, which means you're developing more significant disengagement of the pelvic floor. When we have that full disengagement, and it can allow for full engagement, and that therefore you're moving throughout a more complete range of motion within our whole pelvic floor bowl or pelvic bowl. When our muscles are moving through their full range of motion, they gain simplicity and strength. We know this in general for the body, right? And so being able to practice this specifically in how it relates to our diaphragm and our pelvic floor is crucial for the structural integrity and long-term health and function of our pelvis. I encourage you to practice this regularly. This is a crucial breathing exercise for all women to know if they're interested in supporting their long-term pelvic health in a holistic and integrated way. Happy practice.